Check one, check 1, 2, 2. What's going on, guys? This is your AEW Dynamite post show for August 13th, 2025. And heading into the show, we are in the middle of Forbidden Door season. And unlike other Forbidden Door seasons in the past, there hasn't been much of a New Japan presence heading into this show. I know that it feels like all the major big names that were involved in New Japan, when you associate it for the past decade, names like Will Ospreay, uh, Okada, all these Shibata, all of these names are already currently under contract with AEW. So it's kind of hard for them to hold their own when it comes to the original concept of this being kind of a New Japan versus AEW show. But tonight, it feels as if their presence has become more felt with the additions to the matches that we have been officially set for this pay-per-view coming up next weekend, which I'll be doing a post-show immediately following the event. Guys, before we get into this, please remember to hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't. This was a pretty eventful show. Like I said, we've had some matches that became official for the Forbidden card next week, and we had some storylines progress in a way to where we are getting more progress, and it is becoming a little bit more exciting when it comes to AEW. Tony Khan has been making the media rounds lately, and earlier today, there was a little bit of excerpts of the interview that he did earlier. And I think that what he said made a lot of sense. He was talking about how, AEW kind of always has this knock against him that they don't tell stories. They just do wrestling. And he comes across and says, that's not really something that if you constantly watch the show, if you're a regular viewer, you would know that that's a falsehood. That is a narrative that I do believe has been created, that has been stuck to them for people who don't regularly watch the show, and that's fine. People like what they like, but I think that narrative that they don't tell stories should be buried. Now, if you want to say that they don't tell good stories, now that is something that is very debatable, right? There's been a lot of stories throughout the last, couple of years that may seem on a surface level, but a story is a story, whether it's this deep, enthralling, layered story like the Bloodline or something more surface level, a story is a story. But we kick off the show with the segment that was advertised last week. MJF, Hangman Page, face to face. These are two guys who are AEW originals, two of the more prominent faces that the company has been around with, that has been a homegrown talent, right? So MJF hits the ring first. He is the CMLL champion. Zach Jr. and the Ace are the only names I know, but I don't follow New Japan like I should. Hey, Gabe Kidd is very good as well. Gabe Kidd is one half of my match of the year. Him and Kenny Omega back in January at Wrestle Kingdom in the Tokyo is still to this date my match of the year. It's still July. It's still August. July, August. Same month, right? Still a couple of months left, so that could change, but that's still my choice for right now. But MJF and Hangman Page, they kick off the show. And you have MJF saying, look at us, a bunch of homegrown talent, two guys who have been here from the beginning, the main character and the antagonist. That is what we are, at least in the eyes of the fans and what we've been labeled. It's been a long time and we've known each other for a long time. And I know that you're most vulnerable when you're angry. This is the only reason why I haven't broken you is because I haven't wanted to yet. And you see Hangman Page start to get angry. And he says, basically, you think you can break me. Have you seen what I've had to do and what I've had to go through to get this AEW World Championship? As we know, for the last couple of weeks, we have seen MJF call Adam Page Seabiscuit. And if you know the movie Seabiscuit, you know that at the end, Seabiscuit does win, which Hangman Adam Page correctly brings up in this battle, right? He says, you're going to have to earn this title shot if you want to have it at Forbidden Door, which is something that you haven't done. And you're going to have to put up that contract, which is something that you are trying to work around, right? It says, you're not this guy who really is wanting to put up the risk, right? MJF doesn't want to put it all on the table. He wants to use this as a backup plan. He wants to basically have an insurance policy in case he fails, right? And you see MJF bring up the fact that, you're not this infallible god, Hangman. You are this alcoholic. You are this guy who is very much flawed. And Hangman retorts with, yes, I could recognize these flaws that I have, but I run to them. And you hear a guy in the crowd shout, that's my champ. I believe that's why Hangman is so beloved by the fan base, because a lot of times, especially, when it comes to baby faces, there's not a lot of baby faces that are layered. It's always, they're kind of this white toast baby face. A guy kind of like Cody Rhodes is kind of the perfect example for me, where it's like he's this guy who's flawless when it comes to his morals and the way he walks. Is just this kind of very much so Superman, where there's not many flaws to where it's a normal person. No normal person is perfect like that, right? And I've kind of always gravitated towards baby faces like Steve Austin, who are very much so, rough around the edges, but you can tell at the same time they have some form of a moral compass, right? And we end this segment with MJF being baited by Hangman Page into going all in, because that is the spirit of AEW. We put all our chips on the table, and Hangman Page goats MJF into putting his contract on the line, and it is official. Hangman Adam Page versus MJF for the AEW World Title at Forbidden Door. Before I get into the next segment, guys, please remember to hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't. Hitting the like button helps the channel out in more ways than you guys even know. And we are this close, less than 200 subs away from 3,000. So if you guys can hit that subscribe button, if you haven't, it'd be much appreciated on my end. They should put Paige and MJF in a parking lot, bro. You're getting too ahead of ourselves, man. Come on now. Now, what's interesting about this is I think that Hangman Page is going to come out victorious this match, out of this, right? We had this long build of him going and chasing after this world title, and for him to lose would be pretty abrupt, especially with it being his first new challenger outside of Mox for the title. But what this is going to do that's really going to be interesting for me is, where do we go from here with MJF, right? There's still lingering tension between him and the Hurt Syndicate. There's a big possibility where we can get them involved and spin this out to a match between him and Bobby Lashley, because there's still lingering problems there storyline-wise. So I think that's a possible direction that we can get. We can have a possible scenario where it looks as if MJF is going to win, but the Hurt Syndicate possibly get involved. And we could have this storyline where MVP says, I prevented you from doing this, from winning the title, because I didn't want Bobby Lashley to hurt you. If you remember a few weeks back, MVP told MJF that he hoped he isn't successful in his endeavor, because he knows that if he does capture the title, that Bobby Lashley is going to cause him serious damage. And we could see that, right? MVP kind of being like this protective father figure over MJF and preventing him from winning the title, to not have Bobby Lashley put his hands on him. That's a direction that I think we could possibly go. But hey, we're going to be able to know what goes down next weekend, and you're going to be able to talk about it immediately following the show on the Fast Count post show for Forbidden Door. Next, we get into Mox versus Kevin Knight. Mox, this is in his hometown of Cincinnati, Ohio. He got a big babyface reaction from the crowd, going up against Kevin Knight, one half of Jet Speed. And we've seen the last several weeks of Mike Bailey having these singles matches, right? We've been able to see what Mike Bailey is able to do and showcase what he can do. And we kind of forget how good Kevin Knight is, due to the fact that when they have the split of the team, Mike Bailey is the usual one doing the singles match. But Kevin Knight looked great. I think that they told a perfect story. I think Mox went into this match with the intention of letting Kevin Knight show off what he can do outside of the tag team. And there was multiple different spots throughout the match where you kind of sit there and kind of go, whoa, right? This guy has some crazy athleticism. And I enjoyed the match very much, because going into this, I think it's obvious Mox was going to win. But what was more important was having a young guy like Kevin Knight show off that he can hang with Mox, who, in my opinion, is the ace of AEW. Anytime that AEW has been in a funk and needed somebody to hold the AEW championship, or somebody to fill in for a big spot due to an injury or any other unforeseen circumstances, Mox has always been the guy to step up. Like his matches or not, one thing that you could say about the guy is it's extremely rare that he's hurt, and it's extremely rare that he is not there for the company. But we see Kevin Knight get caught kind of like a Venus flytrap, and he gets caught into this triangle kind of choke, and we see him pass out, Mox picks up the win. The Death Riders are there. They start giving Kevin Knight a case of the beats. Mike Bailey is there. Then the numbers game kind of gets funky in that scenario. And it looks as if Jet Speed is left for dead, right? But we hear Darby Allin's music hit. Darby Allin, one hand, has a skateboard, and the other hand, he has a body bag. Jet Speed is able to help clear the ring with the distraction of Darby. We have Wheeler Yuta look as if he's about to be put into a body bag. And then we see Darby Allin about to hit a coffin drop him. But in midair, like this boa constrictor or this anaconda or cobra, whatever type of badass deadly snake you could think of, Claudio catches Darby Allin midair with an uppercut. He sits there and he puts Darby Allin in the body bag and he puts him on his shoulders and just whirls him around the ring. I don't know if Darby Allin has a death wish or the guy is like Mick Foley in the sense where he just enjoys being hurt and put in uncomfortable situations, but that doesn't feel nice, I bet, right? So Darby Allin is getting, worked by these guys. And we see Will Ospreay come out and make the save. Yes, the Billy Goat, the same guy who a few weeks ago said he has herniated discs in his back and that he was injured. He said he was going to do his best to make Forbidden Door, and he was able to accomplish that. If you guys remember, at All In, he was sidelined by the Death Riders after they put his neck in that chair and stomped on it. He says, basically that, you guys try to take me out, and you're not sitting here, Mox, wanting to accept Darby Allin's challenge. So I got an idea for you. Why don't you guys get your friends? I get a group of friends, and we're going to have a lights-out steel cage match at Forbidden Door. Lights out, there's going to be some extreme violence, steel cage matches. You know what we're going to get. You know it's going to be a lot of violence involving Jon Moxley. And we get revealed later on in the night, right? Will Ospreay is being interviewed backstage by Renee Paquette. And she goes on and she says, Will, you had some herniated discs. How are you feeling? And he's like, I'm fine, right? He goes on to say, this Forbidden Door season doesn't feel Forbidden Door-y enough, so I made a phone call to my old bosses at New Japan. Let's get something done. And he announces that he is going to have Tanahashi, yes, the ace, during his farewell tour. I know a lot of the attention when it comes to the farewell tours is thrown John Cena's way, but we are also in the middle of the Aces retirement tour as well, and he is officially joining Will Ospreay's team. It was later announced in the show that Ospreay's team is going to be him, Darby Allin, Tanahashi, the Golden Lovers. It's going to be a big-time matchup set for them, right? Everybody's looking forward to that. I think we are all looking forward to that match. Specifically, what is going to go down, right? Looking forward to that a lot. And the Death Riders, their tag team is going to be Mox, the Bucks, Claudio, Gabe Kidd. A lot of bodies going to be flown around, right? Mox is a bleeder. Yuta got good heel heat. Love the chance. Wheeler Yuta gets his ass kicked on a weekly basis. But hey, the guy is constantly on TV, which is a good sign for him, right? Guys, please remember to hit that like button and subscribe. Mox is a bleeder. Very much so. Triple H was a bleeder back in his time. Ric Flair as well. It felt those guys, if you breathed on them the wrong way, then poof, you saw a crimson mask. We get into the ladies portion of the show. We have Mercedes Moné, Tekla, and Sky Blue versus Alex Windsor, who is, of course, a part of this four-way, this interpromotional four-way for the TBS Championship at Forbidden Door. And she is joined by Willow Nightingale and Queen Emanata. Queen Emanata versus Mercedes Moné is a pay-per-view match in the making that I am looking forward to seeing sooner rather than later. Queen has really been doing her thing on Collision with Tekla. Enjoyed every second of it. And her and Stephanie McCure is probably a dream match for the Gooners, considering that both of them have similar finishes. when it comes to, the chocolate kisses and the devil's kisses. Both interesting moves. I enjoy watching them do it much more than I enjoy watching Dino Bravo do it. But you see Toni Storm, she's up in the stands with the people. She's getting the standing ovation. Her music is playing. Her ovation is cut off by Athena's music hitting, and Athena is also in the crowd. And throughout this whole match, the sole purpose was to build up Alex Windsor in front of the crowd, make it to where she's a viable contender for this championship and make it to where you actually sort of believe that she can come out the winner. And I think that's what they did. She's very similar in build to Chris Statlander, as somebody who's very powerful. And that's a match that we could potentially see down the line, more often in the future. And Alex, she came out looking very strong. Mercedes, she had her sequences with Queen. Like I said, that's a future pay-per-view match in the making. Sky Blue, she ended up tapping out in a sharpshooter by Alex Windsor to continue to build her for her match at Forbidden Door. We see Toni Storm and Athena brawling in the crowd. Eventually, they get into the ring after Mercedes Moné. She takes advantage of Alex Windsor when she's kind of celebrating her win. And so we got them all into the ring. And then we see Toni Storm and Alex Windsor get the best of Athena and Mercedes. And they have their show in Scotland next week. And she sits there, and Toni Storm issues a challenge for a tag team match. Her and Alex Windsor versus Mercedes Moné and Athena. And she says, we are going to ride bareback all over Scotland. The sexual innuendos be a bit much, but it is part of Toni Storm's charm. One of, if the most interesting characters and entertaining characters in all of professional wrestling. The women's wrestling scene is really strong in America at the moment. I've said it for a while that the most interesting part of WWE programming right now is not the men. I think the last 6 months coming out of WrestleMania, the women have been carrying it. And you have AEW with strong women like Toni Storm and Mercedes Moné and Athena kicking ass in Ring of Honor. So if you are a fan of women's wrestling in America, you are eating very good. Next, we're getting into Scope versus Stokely Hathaway. I'm sure that there was people that were, chomping at the bit to watch this. The women put on a show. The tag match next week is going to be good, especially in Scotland. I'm interested to see how they're received over there. This is the first time AEW is doing a show. And usually, if you pay attention to, the WWE shows, all these international shows, the crowd are usually extremely living for it, due to the fact that they don't get these people, to perform in front of them very often. So I'm looking forward to the crowd for that. Cope versus Stokely, right? Cope comes out. People sing Metalingus, which has now become a tradition. He has taken over Chris Jericho's spot as the old man who gets his theme song sung to him. But you have Stokely come out, and Stokely is dragged by security. He is kicking and screaming like a toddler, and he goes for a spear against Cope. Cope doesn't move. Cope is just smacking him around throughout the arena. They go out to the crowd. If it goes to a random guy, he picks up on, he said, what do you think about Stokely? He says he's short, he's bald, and he gets no hose. No hose. The horror, no hose. Cope asked the crowd, is there any hoes in the house? We get a few acknowledgments. He says, there's a couple of them in there. Then he goes up to a female fan, and he says, basically, would you take Stokely? And she's like, is that a serious question? He says, Stoke, you're not going to get lucky tonight. Adam Copeland continues to go back to the ring and lay a case of the beats on Cope. The referee is distracted for a minute, so FTR tries to get involved, but the referee doesn't see it. Then eventually we have Cope go for another spear, but Cope throws like baby powder in his eyes, and then we get a 3-on-1 beatdown of Cope. The restraining order is lifted, so Cope can now get his hands on FTR, but we hear the music of none other than everybody's favorite father figure. That is Christian Cage. He is in hand with Spike. He is going to make the save for the great Adam Copeland. Then we get the patriarchy involved, Nick Wayne and Kip Sabian. They're able to clear house. We get a moment where you see Cope and Christian Cage back-to-back standing. They face each other. We don't know what we're going to see, the reaction. Christian offers a Cope spike. He takes it. Christian goes to walk away, and then we see Cope give him a hug. But instead of this, friendly, warm embrace, Christian kind of has a confused face, kind of contemplating, and he walks away. And that is how we end that segment. We're going to see Christian and Cope team back up at Forbidden Door against Kip Sabian and Nick Wayne. It's a good opportunity for those young guys to be in the ring with Cope and Christian. It's a shame, right? The way that all these yellow tape is. You got the Dudleys going up against the Hardys at Bound for Glory in October, and you know that in a dream scenario that Christian and Cope would be in that match as well, but it just sucks that certain companies are okay working with each other, and other companies aren't okay with working with each other. All this red tape is just, if it sucks, but hey, it is what it is, right? At one point with Edge and Christian, I better get a 5-second pose for flash photography. If not, I riot. It's gonna happen sooner rather than later. Wonder what happened with Chris Jericho, man. Has anybody even thought about Chris Jericho since he's been gone? That Fonzie tour has been up for a long time. It kind of feels as if, he's waiting by the phone for Tony to call him. And it's like sitting in his office just by the phone, just waiting. Any minute I'm going to get a call from Tony, and he doesn't. Poor guy. It is what it is. Next, we get a 8-man tag. We have the Bucks and Josh Alexander and the prototype Kyle Fletcher against Ishii, Hologram, who's making a rare Dynamite appearance, Brody King, and Takahashi, who is the name that is revealed because Kyle Fletcher said he wanted the best from New Japan to come in this match, and we get Takahashi as the member of this team. What's more interesting about this is the continued treatment of the Bucks. We get an announcement over the intercom that says the Bucks will get no music. So they come out with no music. We see on the different LED screens, Mr. Instant Replay and Slick Nick, which were names that the Bucks went under on the Indies. And we get to the ring and we see Justin Roberts say, once we get Kyle Fletcher and Josh Alexander coming in and the tag team partners of these guys. And you see Justin Roberts just kind of cowering in the ring in the corner due to the Bucks just standing over him. And eventually Justin Roberts gets himself an invite to the Super Kick party. That Justin Roberts don't know when to shut the hell up, does he? At first he gets choked out by Danielson and WWE. Then he gets to eat a super kick by the Bucks. Guy doesn't know when to stop. But Takahashi is the guy who picks up the win for his team. It looks as if they're building a match between him and Kyle Fletcher, whether it's going to be on Collision or next week's episode on Dynamite and Scotland or Forbidden Door. It's nice to have him in the fold. It's nice to have a couple of names that we usually don't get. Brody King, every week he has a moment where he delivers a cannonball, whether it's to the Bucks, whether it's to other people. The guy is one of those individuals who very much so in the same vein as Bam Bam Bigelow or Vader, when you look at it, it's like, that's a huge man and he shouldn't be able to do the things that he's doing, but for some reason he can do it. Next, we get a spot where we're seeing Swerve Strickland being interviewed. He is being interviewed right there on the ramp. And Renee asked him, are you even cleared to wrestle at Forbidden Door? And he says, we're strong people. He says, we can't really stop. He points to the crowd. He's like, they don't want us to stop either. He is interrupted by the champion, Okada. He tells Swerve that he can't beat him. We get a pull-apart brawl between these two. Really looking forward to that match. So we see Mox. He's backstage. He's walking with the Death Riders, and he's approached. and he's getting informed that Tanahashi will be on Will Ospreay's team. So he's asked, who's going to be on your team, right? And he says, yo, Tanahashi. He's like, the ace, Tanahashi. Okay. Walks into a locker room. We don't see who's sitting there. It's revealed that it's the Bucks. And like I said earlier, it's going to be Mox, Claudio, Gabe Kidd, and the Bucks versus Darby Allin, the Golden Lovers, Will Ospreay, and Tanahashi. Now, you know, with the names involved, we are going to see some crazy shit. You know, Tanahashi, who's famous for having, you know, not the best knees. You know, I see people online kind of want to, you know, dub them as pulled pork knees. You already know he is going to want to jump off of that cage. Same thing with Ibushi, who is somebody who has been battling back and forth the past 2 years of these injuries. You know, these guys don't give a fuck and are going to sit there and do something insane. Oh, my God. The main event, the Ops versus LFG. Another rare appearance on Dynamite by Roosh, who had a very funny, you know, Hey You video with RJ City on the AEW YouTube channel. Check it out if you haven't. Some good stuff. Swerve's house. I know you are a big Swerve guy. I am a big Swerve guy as well. It's good to see we're going to have Kenny Omega back, right? It's been a minute. We haven't seen Omega back since All In. So it's nice to see the Best Bout Machine back. I had one of my mentors in this content game, Robin Lumberg, you know, approached me about something. He's going to be doing something with Ibu, if you guys know who Ibu is. And he asked me about this kind of debate about Punk versus Omega, right? And obviously, you know, Robin's very much so the WWE guy. He went with CM Punk, and one thing that I pointed out to, of course, you know, out of the two guys' careers, you know, Punk has the most famous moment, the pipe bomb, right? Something that we still talk about to this day. But one thing that Kenny has over Punk is the Elite and Kenny Omega were so over at some point without the WWE machine that they had a whole company be built around them. That's pretty impressive, right? That's something that doesn't get talked about enough, right? I think the fact that that's something that should be a feather in their cap when we have a debate between those two guys. And obviously, Kenny Omega's the better wrestler. Like, let's not even fucking debate that, right? But Roosh and Shibata, throughout this whole match, we saw a lot of chops, multiple different, you know, chops from different individuals. I hope Bret Hart didn't watch that match because he certainly would have not been pleased by that. Joe, he taps out Drew Alisco. The Ops look very strong in this. We had earlier in the night, we had a vignette for the return of Hook. The Hook signal was put out in the air. So I'm thinking that when we get Hook back, naturally the first person that he is going to have a program with would have to be the Ops, for, you know, they're basically replacing him with Hobbs. If you guys remember that match that he had with Samoa Joe, I think that was good. Robin doesn't think wrestling happens outside of WWE. I 100% agree. That's my guy, though. You know, John Cena, he said something earlier, and he said this before. This isn't the first time he said this, and we saw Indiana Pacer point guard Tyrese Halliburton reiterate this online, where he says, "I'm not a wrestling fan. I'm a WWE fan." And there's a distinct difference. I think so. You know, if you're somebody who indulges in everything, right? WWE, AEW, you catch a New Japan match here and there, or you catch little pieces from TNA or NWA, whatever it is, I believe that's a wrestling fan. If you're somebody who just watches WWE, you're not a wrestling fan. You're a WWE fan. So, but Joe picks up the win for his team. We see Hangman Page. It looks as if he is leaving the building. And he's asked about, you know, how is he going to prepare for his match against MJF? And he gets jumped from behind by MJF. MJF throws him on the roof of a car. He's beating Hangman Page down. And he says, "When I told you I was gonna break you, so you haven't seen anything yet. Looking forward to that. MJF, star of the big time movie Happy Gilmore 2, box office sensation. Would you call it? Well, I don't think you would consider that because the movie was on Netflix, so I don't think that fits. But I don't know what do you call streaming sensation. Hook is gonna be pissed. Hook is I enjoy me a little Hook. I'm a hooker. Yeah, I'm a hooker. Guys, please remember to hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't. It helps the channel out in more ways than you even know. But it was an eventful show, really solid. If you're somebody who was looking for a reason to get excited for Forbidden Door, I think that AEW was able to provide you with that, especially with the announcement of the cage match. I think that's going to be sick. You have all the elite performers pretty much under one roof in that match, adding guys like Gabe Kidd, adding Tanahashi. So need to watch that movie. If you like the first one, you're going to like the second one. A lot of different callbacks to the original, and they had heart. The first Happy Gilmore movie had heart too, but this one kind of, not enough to where like you're gonna cry or anything like that. But there's gonna be moments where you're just like, oh, like I miss Chubbs, I miss Grandma, different moments where you're just like, damn. But hey, this is a solid movie. Cameos galore, but solid movie. But guys, I'm going to head out. It has been a long night. But like I said earlier, we're going to be going live immediately following Forbidden Door next weekend. We're doing the Raw post show on Monday and be back next week for the AEW Dynamite post show. It'll be the go home show for Forbidden Door, so I'm sure a lot of things will go down there as well. But guys, remember, please hit that like button and subscribe. Night Pops. I am Kevin Zwicker. I'm out.